Outside, rain thrummed against the tall windows of a city center antiquarian bookstore as if there were no tomorrow. The shop was dim, and long shadows snaked across shelves promising pulp magazines published in the days before the golden age of SF. Alexander Blackwood, owner of Blackwood's rare books, was like most in the city famed for his collection both obscure and mysterious. It was on such a turbulent night that young Jacob stumbled into Blackwood's shop looking for shelter. The bookstore was one of those that called him in, drawn to the ancient books everyone whispered legends about and its eccentric owner. As he walked up and down the lanes, his eyes were drawn to a particular book propped on top of one of those short shelves in one shadowy corner. The book was black leather faded to the shadow of gray and age-crinkled pages. No title appeared on its spine, and the cover displayed an odd symbol, a thorny knot around an eye. Jacob tentatively reached out, his fingertips brushing the embossed symbol as a chill raced down his back. The room seemed to chill as he reached for the book. Without any warning, Mr. Blackwood materialized out of nowhere and honed in on Jacob with those unnaturally electric eyes of his. "Book of Shadows?" he whispered in a low, gravelly voice. "Most perilous of volumes, the work is not for the meek." Jacob's heart skipped a beat. "Book of Shadows?" Blackwood flashed a wary but piqued look. "Yes, some legends claim it contains secrets best left unknown to mere mortals. Almost all of us begged for its learning, but a few also returned home unharmed." The warning disguised as a sign did not deter Jacob. He felt the lure of that book for some strange reason. May I see it?" "Jesus, what kind of flavors are you trying here?" he murmured. Finally Blackwood just nodded gravely. "Very well. But recall, young chap, knowledge has a price." Jacob, with trembling fingers, opened the book. The pages inside were scrawled with esoteric symbols and diagrams, an indecipherable writing that seemed to wriggle across the page. He flipped to the first page and started reading, the words pulling him into their mysterious hold. With time, hours seemed to pass Jacob by as he dove headfirst into the Book of Shadows. The thunderstorm outside continued to wail, lightning bolts piercing through the windows and creating haunting silhouettes on every surface. As Jacob read on, he felt like there was something else in the room with him and the voice that seemed only to whisper at the periphery of his staid consciousness. Jacob read a part of the book that had to do with dark incantations and forbidden rituals as midnight drew closer. Then he opened it, to read of summoning spirits beyond the veil, and commanding unthought of powers. His stomach twisted in nausea and his skin crawled, but still he was unable to turn back from the forbidden knowledge splayed out before him. An icy wind swept through the shop, extinguishing the candles and leaving me in darkness. Jacob felt his heart beating in his chest as he noticed he wasn't alone anymore. Shadows flitted about in the periphery of his sight, twisting into fiendish forms. "Who's there?" His voice shook as Jacob called. There was no response, just the sound of his fear reverberating back. He made to grab a nearby lantern, his hand trembling as he attempted to light it. The flame sprang aglow, and Jacob saw the outline of a figure hidden in darkness, tall gaunt man with such pale skin that his eyes seemed to shine. "Mr. Blackwood?" Jacob ventured in a whisper. The figure lurched forward awkwardly. Then, it hissed low and deep, its voice sounded distant or carried on the wind. "You have called forces you cannot command." Jacob stepped back, his heart beginning to thud with fear. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to learn," he stuttered, his thoughts a whirlpool of inquisitiveness and fear. The figure moved slowly out of the dark, spreading through the room a palpable presence in its wake. "Book of Shadows, ask the toll," it said in an echoey voice that caused Jacob to get so cold. The figure lunged forward toward Jacob before he could do anything, and its hands made a grab for the book. Jacob clung to it instinctively, he wouldn't lose this one. A battle of wills occurred, the miasma carrying with it an ancient dusty smell and a child wailing in frustration. Calling on all of his energy, Jacob finally freed himself from the hold. Crashing backwards, he raced for the door with it clutched to his chest. Its ethereal wails followed him through the shop as it made chase. The book was clenched in his fists, and just like that, Jacob broke into the rain-drenched roads. and the hungry specters of shadow reaching out to him in wild abandon as he ran mindlessly through maze-like appendages. Desperate and fearful, he hid anywhere there was cover, empty doorways, peculiar arches. Jacob didn't stop until legs barely able to support his exhaustion led him to the corner of a building where he collapsed into cold stone, gasping in need for air and water. His eyes drifted down to the Book of Shadows, its cover beginning to glisten with water and dirt. He knew it was a danger he should never hold, but could not part with. Jacob blinked, and dawn filtered through the city until he stood in his cramped apartment on its southernmost edge. He bolted down the door and windows, imagining horrors from off earlier that night. There, the book sat alone on his desk with its whispering secrets and calling mysteries. And for days, Jacob alienated himself inside his apartment, tormented by hallucinations and dreams alike to the horrific sensations that flowed from within book itself. Whispers in the dark, a voice that encouraged him to reveal yet more powers of the book. He wanted to leave, but a part of him longed even more to explore these forbidden pages. One evening, consumed by an unquenchable thirst for knowledge, Jacob conducted a ritual from the Book of Shadows, one that was allegedly intended to open interdimensional doorways. Static resonated in the room as he uttered an ethereal series of anthems, a subtle haze coalescing around him. All of a sudden, the air crackled together electricity, and before Jacob an apparition coalesced into being, ghostly shade with empty eye sockets and open mouth. It drifted, its incorporeal self a mass of black rippling ether. Jacob gasped and read too late, for the ancient nature demanded so great a sacrifice from him in turn. The figure extended a shadowy spirited hand, its touch of ice against Jacob's form. Bellowing one last, tormented wail as he spiraled out of existence into the void. At Blackwood's Rare Books, Mr. Blackwood looked upon the aftermath of Jackin's desperate escape in stunned silence. He grabbed the Book of Shadows from where it had been thrown on the floor, its pages vacant again. Regretfully, he put it back in its correct place on the shelf and waited for perhaps a future unsuspecting soul to find his way into its lethal hands. The legend of the Book of Shadows whispered and wagged the finger for a century, reminding all who heard her voice that forbidden knowledge was not merely taboo, but downright dangerous. But for those who would go beyond their ken, Jacob was a lesson written in time and shadow. The cursed book story is a clear cautionary lesson. There are certain truths in the world, which are better left alone, or young witches who tempt them will be devoured by their page.